So we had a little bit of a snafu between program coordinator and myself. I unfortunately was not able to get the introduction for Shawn, so I encouraged him to introduce himself. And I will get his slideshow all set up and ready to go, and we'll get going. So thank you for joining us today, Shawn. My pleasure.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Not everyone in the room is a stranger to me, although I may be a stranger to most of you. My lawyer's in the room, so I can hopefully, maybe he's not in the room anymore, I can speak a little freer. Some others that have volunteered in my organization. A board member is also in the room. I won't embarrass anyone, but thanks for having me. My name is Shawn Cardwell, and I am the executive director of an organization called the Forest Grove Foundation. It's actually been around for 2.5 decades, this organization, and I represent a transition from what the Forest Grove Foundation used to be, historically, which I would say Howard Sullivan would give a better presentation on the history of the foundation than I would. But in the last couple of years, the Forest Grove Foundation has transitioned to a social service agency, and we do a lot of work with homelessness and food insecurity in Forest Grove. I'm going to share about that today. I do want to reintroduce one of our employees. Riley is here, and I just want to thank her for being here. A little introduction about myself. I can't remember the bio that I sent to Amy, but a little bit about my history. I grew up in the area. My parents still live in Cornelius. I lived on the Hillsborough High School side of Cornelius when I grew up, so I'm a graduate of Hill High. Superintendent Parker was a teacher there. I didn't have the privilege of being in his class, but we've shared some stories on that. Hell, I did. I went to Pacific University as an undergrad and as a graduate student. I studied mathematics and music here. I've been in this room before, but it's probably been 25 years, and eaten this food as well. And in a similar vein, I'm still alive after, anyways. My humor might not translate well, I'm sorry. So I graduated here with a music and math degree, and then went on to study teaching. I got my MAT from the School of Education here. I technically still have some faculty status. I taught in the math department here a couple semesters ago, and then still employed in a very small amount by the School of Education to oversee math educators. It's a different part of my career, but I still participate where I can in that world. What else about me? My family is from Forest Grove generationally. My wife and I moved back to Forest Grove just almost 3 years ago. We spent 10 years in Kansas City, Missouri for her to pursue her PhD. She's an economist. She's a full-time faculty member at PCC Rock Creek and as an economics teacher. And we moved back 3 years ago and settled just on the other side of Forest Grove in my grandparents' home. Generationally, as I mentioned, now that I'm back in Forest Grove and the 7th generation of my family here, which goes back to pioneer settlers, including a grave marker on this campus, which denotes one of the pioneer grave sites somewhere on this campus for my family. Not my name, Cardwell, but when you go back 7 generations, you've got about 32 grandparents, so it's one of those great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. So a lot of history here, a lot of affection that I carry in my heart for not only Pacific University, but Forest Grove, Western Washington County. And it's just a privilege to be back and to have been given the opportunity to direct a nonprofit in town that works with poverty issues, which is part of my journey for the last 20 years. Both as a teacher, when in Kansas City I taught in the urban core in a high school that was in an area of town that was of lesser means, and have served homelessness in a number of ways. I also have a background in ministry and have spent various jobs helping and assisting in local area churches, both here when I was growing up and then in Kansas City. I hope that's enough. That's a lot that I just said about myself. You might have seen me at the Forest Grove Farmers Market on Wednesday night selling donuts. You might have already seen me out there. I'm the donut guy. My wife and I started a little side business. My grandfather, Floyd Reynolds, he loved donuts. As you know, there's no donut shop in town, so we started a little side donut thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's growing, and you'll see more of us around. So sometimes people stop me in the street and say, hey, I love your donuts, or sometimes they say, hey, thanks for helping with homelessness, or hey, I saw you at Pacific. That's just me. So that's a little bit about me. Do I do this, Bryce? Push a
Yes.
button? Okay. How about that one? No? How about that one? How about this one?
Is the right arrow button?
Got it. I'll try that one again. Yeah, there we go. Also, hello everyone joining us virtually. I just want to say, start off with a thank you. Not only thanks for having me, this is a picture that was taken about a year ago. This is me. This is Councilman Tim Rippey. That's Phil Carroll. If you've been in Forest Grove for any length of time, you've enjoyed a sandwich from Phil's Subs. That was my college job, working for Phil at Phil's Subs. This was taken a year ago. And I say this because I really appreciate the relationship with Rotary in general. This was the Daybreak Rotary group that we partnered over a year ago on a lunch program to provide lunches that got right into the homeless camps and served and fed homeless individuals in and around Forest Grove. So I want to say thank you to Rotary in general, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities to serve Forest Grove and those that struggle through poverty issues. Not exactly with this kind of effort, but in a similar effort. Looking forward to getting great opportunities to serve alongside Rotarians together in our community. So thanks for the opportunity to share. I hope for more. I don't know if you guys have like softball teams, but I'll play on your team if you need me to versus the Daybreak. I think you can.
More people need it.
Yeah. Maybe I should play with them. I don't know. Forest Grove Foundation, here's a screenshot from our website. It's nice and alliterative, but helping the homeless and the hungry is just an easy way to sum up what we do. There are other nonprofits in and around the area that do the work, but Forest Grove Foundation we're unique in our focus in that way, and unique in our focus in this region, Forest Grove, but also into the rural settings. We have a reach to Banks, Scales Creek, Buxton, Gaston. We care about I think we care maybe like a few others organizationally for those communities and how to resource those that suffer the effects of poverty. And this is something I think I'm probably preaching to the choir, if you can allow me to use that phrase. The issue with homelessness and maybe those that struggle with being able to provide enough food for their families is, in our culture, a dehumanizing conversation. And again, I think I'm probably preaching to the choir, so I don't mean to rail on this, but part of our job, foundationally, is to remind ourselves every day, and those that we get to talk to, that there are actual humans that we're serving that need help in our community. There are humans that live in tents right outside of the perimeter of our town, Forest Grove, that don't have a home. There are people that wind up at food pantries at the Forest Grove High School, at Neil Armstrong Middle School, at Solid Life Food Pantry, and a number of others that don't have enough food for their families. I assume you knew that, or know that. If you don't, now you do, and these are real people. They're humans, and oftentimes in the news or in the public conversation, it's more about garbage, drug abuse, mental health, and those are all real situations, but they're all ways to not talking about them as people, but talking to them as symptoms, talking about their symptoms to the problem. I just want to state that because I want. If we're going to stay in a relationship and grow in our relationship together, which I hope we do, we have to remember that we're serving humans. And those humans need a name, not just homeless or hungry, which I'm guilty of saying because it's easy to say, but they're humans. And what should we call them? For sure they're community members. Because you live outside, because you're cut off from the utility services of living in a home, Is that, on both sides, does that disconnect you from the participation in community, or does it disconnect us from being able to include them in our community? So for sure there are community members, but maybe we should consider our neighbors as well. And if we use language, humanizing language around homelessness, then it might stir our hearts and change our minds and our conversation with our other neighbors about how to serve and love. It is hard to get away when you start talking about people that live outside as neighbors. It's hard to get away from loving your neighbor as yourself and having to wrestle with those challenges. If I can take up that golden rule. And then, if you consider the neighbors, you might actually consider people that struggle in this way as friends, which is a different level of challenge. And then maybe even could we use brothers and sister language and mom and dad language if we start considering people that are struggling through mental health issues or substance abuse. And I'm sure in your families, I can list off a half a dozen issues and someone in your family is struggling in those areas. Can we make the connection to those that we might not yet know living in the forest right outside of town as brother, sister? And this is my heart. I'm not sharing programmatic details at all. I'm sharing the journey we're on to say, hey, how do we include those that struggle in these ways? Someone asked me just a couple days ago, what do you imagine Forest Grove to be in 20 years? And I just thought, well, could we be a community that welcomed anyone? And this is not a slight, but I think as a community, we're building new houses, and we've all seen the signs. Housing starting at $650,000, and there's a welcome sign to that level of socioeconomic ability, and I welcome them as well. But when they see someone, wherever you're at on the political spectrum with Max, we don't want Max because it's going to bring criminals and it's going to bring homeless. Again, if I'm honest, I'd say, why not welcome individuals that need help, that need community, that need love into our community as well? That might be a struggle for you to hear someone say that, I don't know, personally, but why not include everyone? And in 20 years, could we have a community that would see someone coming into our town or into our neighborhoods that was struggling and say, well, that's not okay. So we're a community, what do you need? How do we help? How do we engage? How do we be your community, your neighbor, your friend, or your family? And homelessness, the journey from homeless to housed becomes really quick and really short. From addicted to healthy becomes really short. Addiction lives in houses as well as it does out of houses. You guys know this. Substance use lives in houses as well as it does out of houses. It's just that some of these individuals don't have walls to hide their dysfunctions like I do. We can talk about caffeine or sugar or Netflix or any of these things, and we all know that we all struggle with coping with this world. And most of us can pay $35 a month to have garbage swing by our house every week and grab our dumpster. And a lot of people are disconnected from that reality because of health, because of burned bridges with family members, because of any number of reasons, and a mix of all of them together sometimes. Those are the humans that we look to serve in our community. Again, it's a little soapboxy and a little bit choir preaching, but that's the heart that I carry as I lead the Forest Grove Foundation, and we serve these individuals in our community. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you for your indulgence. I am going to talk about some programmatic pieces here. So that's the foundation for what we do. You can see the words here. We have a homeless outreach team. Those individuals on that team, when we go, we actually have a van. Last year we got a grant to have a homeless outreach van. We stock that with supplies. And we go out and actually meet individuals living outside on the street, in encampments, in the rural setting as well. And the 3 hours of homelessness outreach, as we build relationships, we resource them with needs. You can imagine what those needs might be, from tents and sleeping bags, socks, toilet paper, snacks and food, on and on, a whole list of supplies that we use. And then we refer those individuals to other services in our community. We have limited resources, and outreach goes to a certain ceiling, and then we have to hand that off to someone that might be able to handhold or walk someone into further resource. Maybe someone needs an ID, maybe they need health care, maybe they need to get onto a housing plan. We refer those out to other organizations as we're growing our capacity. We've been engaged since summer of 2020, so we've built long-term relationships. We know, as an organization, and the outreach team knows the homeless community, and they know us. And when we come, they welcome us, and we know by name. That makes it easier to get into neighbor, friend, and family conversations. And again, we provide basic provisions as well. If you think about not being in a home, how much that disconnects you from utility services. So propane, water, some basic hygiene, we bring that to individuals. And especially when it's cold or coming out of the winter into the spring, we've been providing a lot of propane and water for individuals that are living outside. And we're at a bit of a point in our fiscal year that we need some more. There's an easy way to see the kinds of supplies that we provide. If you want to follow our website, there's a link on there if you want to purchase any number of things. It gets delivered right to our office and goes right into the van and out to the camps. So we do homeless outreach. One of the exciting parts of my work is to identify what we need in the community. And in Forest Grove, well, really Western Washington County is a social service desert. There's no place, and I got this question especially this past year, hey, I met someone, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? And that could be a bottleneck if it's me or even the Forest Grove Foundation. And so usually it required a bus ride or a trip to Hillsborough or Beaverton or sometimes Multnomah County, especially Western Washington County. And I talk about that from Cornelius West, and then that goes north and south to Banks and Gaston. There's no place to do that. So we've carried this vision for the last year and a half to find and locate a place in Forest Grove for Forest Grove Foundation and then other partner agencies to co-locate together to really be a place that someone can show up, schedule an appointment with any number of needs or issues that person may have. You can imagine employment opportunities, substance use issues. They need an ID, they need health care. This will be a place that people can come and at least start getting questions answered in whatever level of need they have. Before I asked the city for some money and they said yes to helping, so we've got some money that we're waiting and we're on track to sign a lease for a location in town that I won't disclose at this time because it's not finalized yet, so I don't want to blow that one up. But it's a very exciting space to be able to partner with many social service organizations in this region into one location. And it's not about just coming to us, we still have to leverage our mobility through outreach and some other things to get out to the community members, but we'll have a place to engage, including with Pacific University in their social work program. This is a very exciting new thing for us, and we're working hard to land it. It's coming soon, though. I expect hopefully an announcement in the next few months. One of the issues, I'll quickly go through this one. One of the issues we have here is housing. What solves homelessness? Homes. What's the problem? What's the crisis we're in now? A housing crisis. Not just, mostly about affordability and inventory. Very difficult right now to find homes, and then to find homes that are affordable. And even there's a lot of service, a lot of money available to vouchering people into homes, but you have to then broker a relationship with a landlord and find that and compete against anyone else looking for an apartment. So imagine, here's how the story goes. A homeless individual goes through their housing process. It might take days, weeks, months. They get a voucher to say, you actually will be subsidized by the government for housing for X amount of time. Go find an apartment. How do they do that? They got to go online to websites where apartments are available and try to get their application in on time, compete with an application that might be a little sketchy based on their rental history, on and on. They're competing against Pacific University students that are looking for housing. They're competing against anyone that might be downsizing into the apartment. It's just a mess. It's very difficult, and there's not a large capacity. So one of the options we're looking at is how do we bridge the gap to stabilize people between tents and homes as the issues around housing work themselves out over the next few years, hopefully. And we're talking about these ideas of a pod village. Small, you can imagine them as micro homes, tiny homes, located in a village that's supported by social workers, case managers, housing navigators, food. And be able to stabilize an individual from 2 months to 2 years as they go through this housing journey. That takes that long, literally. Now, we have some great opportunities here in Forest Grove to build relationships with landlords. If you happen to be a landlord or know of a landlord that would be forward-leaning into conversations about putting people that live outside into their properties, please talk to me. There are real guarantees about landlords getting paid for that. I mean, there's lots of ways around the fears that might be associated with that from a landlord. I'd love to talk to you more about those kind of things. We're looking to bring the regional expert into a scholar residence program out here with us from Portland State University. His name's Todd. I don't need to get into those details, but we're really leaning forward on this in conversation with the city and Portland State. I'll just do a time check here. Bryce, you doing all right? Okay. I mean, you guys are having fun, right? And this is, yeah. I said that our outreach team, we run into a ceiling. Outreach can do so much, and then at some point we've got to have someone that can walk individuals through the maze of issues that they may be having and getting back into homes. And so case management is the name that's given to that, social work, someone that can hold the hand and keep walking with them. Our organization has just hired a couple of case managers, which is good news for us. So we don't have this outreach ceiling. Outreach can hand off to our case management team, and they can walk further for those that are ready to engage housing. By the way, not everyone's ready to engage housing. This is a reality, a myth about homelessness. Everyone's ready immediately. Most people have lost their hope for housing though outside. They don't expect to ever get a home back, and so their time horizon for identifying when that will ever happen is erased, and the issues at hand are in front of them. How do I find food? How do I find a bathroom? How do I stay warm, dry? You ask them, what about housing? And they've either been burned enough times, or they've tried enough times, or they're just trying to survive that. Their hope is lost on that. So a lot of people say, people don't even want, they're too lazy, it's not true. The relationship building trust, again, it takes, we had a conversation with an individual, lives out in Buxton, took him 6 months to finally trust our outreach team just to share some of the struggles that he's going through. And say, I'm ready for a housing conversation now. 6 months, and so just showing up every week, giving him some basic provisions. That's the journey, we're on a long-term journey to help build these relationships. So case managers will help us in that way. I will say this, I had this conversation with Superintendent Parker last year. A lot of the people that are living outside Forest Grove are Forest Grovers. They're not Portlanders. There are people that make the journey out and stay, but not many. There are people that came through our school system. There are people that have family in town that have either, without judgment, run to the errands, burnt the bridges with relationship. They're community members that have been here for a long time, grew up here. Dave.
We're struggling connecting to these social services because they're losing employees. Are you finding the same thing with your kind of connections to community social work and access? Are those programs, we're not even finding the programs anymore.
Yeah. I think across the board, the programs are struggling. Mental health programs, they're not able to fill roles and jobs that are out there. We're very small still. I haven't had trouble finding people we need. We're not hiring a lot. So, anecdotally, not a problem. Macro, big problem. Social workers are not easy to find. Yeah. We have a food program, so we have a refrigerator truck that helps connect local pantries from, Costco donates a bunch of food, for example. goes into our refrigerator truck. We have a driver that's zipping that stuff around town, drops it off at Forest Grove High School, NAMS, Central Cultural, and Cornelius. So we keep the pump primed and getting food around and steadily and safe along the way. We have a lot of dreams around our food provision. The location that we're looking at for our service hub will have a commercial kitchen, and we're really looking to ideas around preparation, preservation, and then delivery of food to other social service agencies, to a food pantry that even is hopefully here at Pacific and wanting to get restarted, as well as food delivery right into camps as people try to stabilize themselves, get back into homes. A lot of dreams about that and hoping to work on that, especially as the hub. Oops, let's go forward instead of backwards. Again, I'll just mention this quickly. We're engaged in the rural setting as well. I don't know how to stay focused in Forest Grove and not know how our relationship with these towns exists. I think it's very important, and we're excited. There's another organization, the Salvation Army, maybe for them. They're another lame joke, sorry. They're very prolific in the area. They're doing some work in the rural settings as well. We're partnering with them in certain ways. This is kind of small text, but we have a number of partners and friends in the community. And you may see other organizations that you're a part of. I don't have New Rotary on here yet because, I don't know, we're still dating. We're trying to figure out who we are to one another, right? And I hope that this moves forward. I hope I can add you here, but you can see a number of partnerships, faith organizations, nonprofits, municipal, etc. We're excited to keep adding this, and this is on our website, and you can go to the website if you want to see more. And now, very specifically, I wanted to share a need that we have. There's a camp here that we call the B Street Camp that's located right in town where homeless people live that are living outside. And you can imagine the accumulation of garbage happens because people live there. There's also historic accumulation of garbage there. And this is not the only issue that those individuals deal with, but that's been a camp for a long time, and the people living there are living amongst the garbage that has been there before they were there. So, Forest Grove Foundation, many thanks to third-time guest Tim Orr. Along the way, he was doing some work with us. Forest Grove Foundation helped write a grant that we received a few $1,000s to help for a cleanup at this piece of property, and we're planning that. We're working with the city. Metro is the one that funded us in this way, and other community partners that would look to maybe help with this effort. We're expecting a cleanup date sometime in the spring, maybe early summer. Technically, it's very wet. Well, it was drying out until Monday. Now it's wet again out there, and having dozens of people go through cleaning up garbage may ruin the camp in a certain way, but we're hoping to plan that soon. And the big ask here, really, this is an immediate need of ours, and I took it to the Daybreak Rotary as well to say, would you help with this specific one? It might be a good way for us to work together. Would New Rotary partner with the Forest Grove Foundation by contributing people power and financial support? I know the Rotary, you can't do one without the other. You guys are tied to service with funding. Service is okay, funding's okay, but I know you like, am I right? You like to do both? Yeah? And help us with this effort that we're going to put together at the B Street Camp cleanup. And really, it's a planning process because I've got to bring all the stakeholders to the table, including those that are living out there. It's really their initiative to say, how do we get help with this issue? Waste management is across the street, but we can't get waste management to drop a dumpster. I mean, there's real ironies in this situation, but we've got a little bit of money. I think we've got enough. We're trying to generate enough goodwill to bring Forest Grove Foundation, Rotary, the City of Forest Grove, maybe Waste Management, and the campers to the table to say, okay, let's plan this day, this weekend, to make an initial cleanup effort. I will tell you it will take more than one cleanup because there's literally it used to be a historic dump at this site. I mean, there's concrete and asphalt pieces that were dumped there decades ago. We don't have to clean all of that up, but there's real piles of things that have accumulated over these last few years. So I'm trying to find the right partnerships in our community to join us in that space, that have people and finance.
Who owns that property?
It's the city of Forest Grove.
That's why they're at the table.
Yeah, that's why we're talking to Forest Grove, and they've got some interest in how to help that as well. So that's the ask. I know that's not ultimately specific, but it involves a planning process, and that's where the details can be figured out between us. We have a website. You're welcome to go there. There are opportunities to make individual donations. You can see our supplies list that we need, and there's a history on there. There are staffs on there. It's a website. And again, just want to thank you for your time. Thanks for hosting, and I'd come back anytime if you have more questions or if there's any questions now. Thank you.